I'd like to call the morning session of the Johnston County Board of Commissioners to order and welcome all those who are here this morning. We have a standing room only presence here this morning. It's good to see the folks here. Also good to know there are people who are watching us on our YouTube live stream, so welcome to you as well. I did want to start off with a new season. As I look from right to left, we've got new faces up here, like we're switching from Thanksgiving to Christmas, although we got an early start at my house for the Christmas season. We are switching, and this board is switching seasons as well, as we have two new faces up here with us today. And it brings us to...
And some real old ones.
Yes, we have some returning ones. Less young. How about
less young.
Yeah. So I did want to mention the board's 6 priorities that we have, and I think that the two new ones will probably agree with these. So they'll have an opportunity in February. We all will to, when we have our strategic planning retreat on the 20th and 21st, to look at these priorities and see if there needs to be any changes made as we look at those. But those 6 priorities are educational funding, infrastructure, financial stewardship, land use, public safety, and our county employees. And I think as you see the many items on the agenda today that we will touch on most of these, if not all of these, in our agenda. So with that, we will open with an invocation and the pledge. I've asked Commissioner Godwin to lead us in invocation. And today we have the Marine Corps League Detachment 1236 of Johnston County here to lead us in the pledge. So if you choose to rise during the invocation, please do so now. Remain standing for the pledge.
Let's pray. Father God, we love you, Lord, and we're thankful for the blessings of this day, for the blessings of this season. We ask a special blessing today on our new members of our board. We ask a blessing that we'll all come together and work in harmony for the benefit of the people of Johnston County. We ask you to bless our county, bless our citizens, our state, and our nation, and give us your wisdom, your love, your guidance, and your patience. For it's in Christ's name we pray. Amen.
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 Yeah, we just want to remind everyone, every child deserves a little merry in their Christmas. So we ask that you support the Marine Corps Reserve Towards the Tots program. Stand by. Detail. Alert. Present. Pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order. Let's go.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
So formal, and he's like, let's go.
First item on the agenda is organization of the board for the coming year. I'll ask our county manager, Rick Hester, to come forth and lead us in the nominations and discussion for chairman for the coming year.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, everybody, and welcome, Ms. Davis, Mr. Rose.
Thank you.
This time, we do this every December, open up the floor for nominations for chairman of the board for the next year. So this time, I'd like to open this nomination.
Mr. Moderator, it has been our custom, it has sort of defaulted to that custom over the years since I've been on here more than a dozen years now, that we serve a couple of years, and our chairman has been in place for that long, but he's done an outstanding job, and we've got a lot of things in the hopper right now. We've got some new faces that I think continuity and stability would be in order, so I move that we name Butch Slaughter as continuing chairman.
Second.
And, okay, just want to make sure that it closed the nominations at this point. And by acclamation, congratulations, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Well, thank you. I'm not going to give anybody a second chance.
That was a powerful motion.
Yeah, yes, it was. Yes, it was. With that, we will continue on with the selection of our vice chairman, and I will open the floor for nominations at this point.
Mr. Chairman, I nominate Patrick Harris.
Second.
All right. Any other nominations? Can I just do the acclamation thing like Rick did? Any objections to that? All right. So, congratulations, Vice Chairman Harris.
Thank you.
All right. And then we will move on to the approval of the agenda. Are there any items that need to be changed, added to that agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the agenda as presented.
I second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Agenda is approved. Next up, we have 11 items today on our consent agenda, and I'll go briefly over those items. One is approval of the minutes from November 4th, both the morning and the afternoon, or the evening meeting. We have a couple additions to our DOT system. We also have adoption of our regular board meeting for 2025. We have approval of public official bonds for the county. We have an appointment to the Kenley Planning Board. And we also have a request by the Sheriff's Office to surplus vehicles and equipment. And those come from a couple of sources, and I guess the funds will go back to the sources that they received the funds from. One is for the goes back to the Department of Revenue, and then also there's some federal forfeiture funds and proceeds from the sale that'll be credited back to those appropriate line items. We also have approval of a contract amendment for rebranding Phase 2 implementations. That is in the amount of $59,500. And we also have confirmed designation of child fatality prevention team, community child protection team, and future local team in there. And finally, we have appointments to several boards, Livestock Arena Management Board, Moccasin Creek Service District Board, Nursing Home Adult Care Home Community Advisory Board, and also the Research and Training Zone Advisory Committee. And then we have budget revisions for social services, the Sheriff's Department, the jail, and all of those are basically to put those funds in the correct line items or make an adjustment to get those into the appropriate expenditure items. And then finally, we have the tax releases and refunds for October 16th through November the 15th. Any of those items need to be withdrawn for further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the consent agenda be approved with the stipulation that the necessary waivers of service policy be included in that.
All right. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? The consent agenda is approved. Next up, we have public comments. We do have one scheduled one. We have our Human Resources Department here and recognize recently retired employees. And Taylor's going to do that for us.
Yes,
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Commissioners, hope y'all are doing well. So today, unfortunately, I'm here by myself, but I do want to recognize our upcoming January 2025 retirees. First, we have Deborah Sharp. She's with our Emergency Services Department. And then we have Bernadette Elliott, who is with our Department of Social Services. So while they couldn't be here, we still wanted to recognize them, but thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, anyone else here wishing to speak during public comment on an item that is not on the agenda? I don't see anyone moving forward. We do have one email. It is from Archie and Pamela Roberts. I think they've been here a few times to address the board on different things, but it's basically a letter commending the board for our commitment to ensure that they put the people and continued growth of Johnston County, including our schools and business growth in the county, and they're glad to be relatively new members now of the community in Johnston County. So that is the one email, and I don't see, there's no others. Okay. So the next item is a presentation from Johnston County 911 Communications regarding public safety paging project, and I think, Mr. Hester, you have a couple of opening words on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to say, Mr. Chairman and board members, I appreciate you mentioning those six priorities every board meeting. That's very important. And this falls into one of those categories with public safety. This project, and Mr. Renfro's here, he can explain it and much better than me, but I wanted to let you know, we've talked about this over a couple of fiscal years' budget. It wasn't quite ready for this year's budget, but with the timing of things, we would like to ask for your consideration on this project as he explains it, and then we would pull the necessary funds from maybe existing funds in our budget. If we have to hit tap some of the reserves, we would do that too. But we think it's a very important project, and when Mr. Renfro and I talked about this last month, we felt it was important to bring it onto the board because it is a public safety item. And so with that, I'd just like to thank you for that, and Mr. Renfro's here.
All right. Mr. Renfro, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Good morning. Commissioner Rose, Commissioner Davis, thank you. Welcome to the board. Johnston County we are asking for a public safety paging upgrade to our system. When we built the new public safety facility, we put in the infrastructure then under a grant that I received from the North Carolina 911 Board. Now the first responders in the field need some different equipment in order to put this vision into a forward movement. It was not ready last year. We thought it was, and we ran into a bump in the road, but now we feel like we can move forward. Currently, Johnston County maintains 2 radio systems, a VHF system in which we page or is a one-way notification to our first responders in the field that incorporates all of the fire service in this county, all of the EMS in this county, emergency services, emergency management, forestry service, a lot of various different responders. It is running on VHF technology on the paging side. It is a one-way conversation. We talk, they listen. That's how they get their notification. It has been that way for many, many years. It is time to move away from 60s, 70s technology and ways of doing that. We have a very robust 800 megahertz radio system, which is two-way. That's how they talk, if you will, back and forth to dispatch and amongst themselves on the scene. That's how they communicate. It's a two-way path. We can, with your approval, we can move away from that VHF system in the near future. Once, if approved, we won't move immediately, but it will be very soon thereafter, hopefully, to alleviate the VHF system. There'll be no more maintenance on that system. We could get rid of it altogether. That would, at a minimum, I'm just going to give it just off of maintenance fees that we pay now, over $150,000 recurring expense each year we would be able to alleviate. That's not encountering any acts of God, because our towers are just lightning rods, if you will. So we could get away from that. The problems we're running into immediately, and the reason for the immediate need, is the length of time it takes to notify our first responders. It takes a considerable amount of time, which in my opinion is far too long. This technology would allow us to do it much quicker. They would get the message in what now takes roughly 30 seconds to get all the tones out for a structural related call. We could do it in probably about 5 seconds. And it would also get rid of what we know as tone mixing or accidental activations, which is a problem and presents a liability issue in my opinion. And we would also have the average fireman would have the ability to listen, one-way communication, listen to our 800 system. They've never had that capability before. So it takes care of a couple of issues until we make that final migration over to P25 800. That is the standard that everyone in our business is working toward. And I think it puts Johnston County in the forefront. Forward thinking and moving to the future instead of dwelling in the past. It puts us in a very good position. We're nothing by my doing, but our staff's doings. These 2 men standing behind me, they will be the next leadership as I will be retiring in February. But this will put this county in a place that a lot of other counties would love to be in. And that's in a position to move to P25 800 paging. And your fire service now is already on an 800 megahertz system. In my opinion, it is counterproductive to maintain 2 separate systems, and one is antiquated and keep paying a recurring cost and maintenance. That's not taken into the time it takes away from my operations manager. It's not counting any of that. That's just a simple number based on maintenance that we pay in a recurring dollar amount each year. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. I don't want to do a Radio 101 class with you, but I'll be more than happy to address any issues or questions you may have.
Any questions?
I have one, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Does this have any impact on our Be-On system?
No, sir. That is totally separate. That is on the 800 side, Mr.
Right.
Gall.
Mr. Chairman, if you recall, those of you who were here, we had discussions during the budget prep this past year, or this current budget prep, about this project, but the technology was not quite ready for us to move in that direction. This is a great project, and it really, really will improve our notification capabilities for all the fire, EMS, all of our public safety folks. So I'm very much in favor of doing this, and I applaud your leadership and efforts and your staff to move us in that direction. And you are correct. We are and will continue to be the envy of
Yes, sir.
many departments around the world.
Johnston County first.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Good job.
I had one question. How would this affect our municipalities? Are they included, like our local police and so forth?
It will not affect the law enforcement side at all.
Okay.
Commissioner. Now, the fire and EMS, you have like Smithfield Fire Department, you have Clayton Fire Department that are municipal departments. Every department in this county will be issued a brand-new piece of equipment.
Okay.
That will, because we, as the county, are changing our method of how we're notifying them. So we have to change pieces of equipment. We gathered their numbers with the help of emergency services on their roster list, and we've added contingency into those numbers to make sure that they have enough equipment to hand each member and each duty crew a device, what we call a pager, that will alert them of a call that is pending for that department. But yes, sir, they are all taken into account. Anyone that is notified by our dispatch center, because we're the only one in the county, we're what they call a primary peace out. There are no secondaries, there are no municipal peace outs. Everything comes from us.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yes, sir.
All right, anything else?
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the request allocating funds not to exceed an amount of $917,111.88 for the cost of upgrading emergency paging system.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. I did have a comment that I think our manager mentioned public safety and been one of our priorities, but I also mentioned, the financial stewardship piece and in our county employees, because it's not just your group, but I look around all our departments that look for opportunities and ways to save the citizens of Johnston County money. And so I appreciate the fact that, when the time was not exactly right, we waited until it was, and have made a significant purchase, probably a lot cheaper than it could have been
Yes, sir.
done otherwise. So,
14% cheaper. Yes, sir.
yeah.
As a matter of fact,
Yeah, there you go, 14%, yeah.
Yes, sir.
All right.
And your backups are intimately familiar with this change.
Absolutely, yes, sir. This is nothing that I've done. This was, Mr. Gowan, this was a fully group effort on, these gentlemen standing behind me are primary, but our department as a whole. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Kevin Hubbard's department
Yeah.
and the fire marshal's division, because EMS is a county function now. Fire departments are still fire departments outside, and they work with the county, contracting back and forth. But we have to take them into consideration because it does affect them directly. Good.
All right. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
All right, next up, we have two presentations from our Cooperative Extension Office, and I think Mr. Bryant Spivey is going to lead those off.
Good morning, and it's a pleasure to be with the Board of Commissioners this morning at your meeting. Certainly those that we have served with in the past, and we look forward to serving with this new board and getting to know each of you better as we do work for agriculture here in Johnston County. We are bringing a couple of grant projects that are being considered for funding from the North Carolina Tobacco Trust Fund Commission. They have been awarded this funding, and I'm going to let the folks on our staff that took the lead in writing those projects share that with you this morning. First Dan Wells and then Nicole Youngblood. I believe we're considering these two items at the same time.
Yes.
But, and I will just add a comment too, that this is revenue that we had anticipated and budgeted to receive and budgeted to expend. It's not exactly what we anticipated, but we're certainly prepared for this.
How did you get Mr. Wells to show up without his cowboy hat on?
I asked that question before the meeting, where's his hat?
I didn't say a word.
Well, next time, Mr. Goblin, Mr. Lauder, just for the two of you, we'll
There you
make sure we're
All right,
properly
all
attired. Good morning, and thank y'all for the opportunity to be here. The grant project, Adding Value to Feeder Cattle, is centered around improving the profitability, safety, and vitality of beef cattle operations in Johnston County. There are 327 farms in the county that have some number of beef cattle. 275 of those have less than 50 heads, so we're talking pretty small operations. It's cumbersome for them to afford the equipment that is necessary to administer health protocols to their calves that increase the value. Proper health vaccine immunizations can increase the value at market of those calves by anywhere from $100 to even $200 per head, depending on how the market stands at the time. So we have about 6,200 brood cows in the county, and so each one of those should hopefully have a calf every year, and so that's the potential we have to add a lot of value to those calves by making this equipment available at very low cost rent to these cow-calf producers. Any questions?
Any questions?
Yeah, I've got some other equipment that you make available for like planting equipment, things like that.
We do not in Cooperative Extension, but the Soil and Water
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking
Conservation
about.
District has a couple of
Right.
no-till drills, yes,
Yeah.
sir. But we have had some cattle equipment available since 2008. It's quite a bit cheaper than what we're going to be able to have with this grant, but and quite a bit less user-friendly than what we're going to be able to afford with this grant. So, and of course, its useful life is starting to show.
Right.
So we're very thankful to have this opportunity to continue offering that service.
Good.
Fantastic.
Any others? All right, I think now we'll hear from Ms. Nicole Youngblood.
All right.
Dan didn't wear his cowboy hat, but we did wear our cowboy boots, right? Good morning, Commissioners. I'm excited to speak to y'all a little bit about our JOCO Grows Agricultural Literacy program. And the goal there is we would like to reach 10,000 K through 5 youth through our JOCO Grows Junior Extension Agents Adventure Guide. Have y'all ever heard of or seen like the Junior Ranger program through the National Park Service? Mm-hmm. So it's kind of similar to that, maybe not as long, but it's still full of really interactive activities where we're wanting to introduce young people to their food. Because whether we know it or not, we eat hopefully 3 times a day, and we want our young people to know and understand where their food comes from and why that's important. Some of the really neat factors to this project is this was actually my master's project at NC State, and so we worked on it for about 2 years with some of my college professors, and we were able to match the adventure guide to North Carolina standard course of study. Hopefully, teachers have a lot on their plates, and we wanted to make sure that any teacher that wanted to utilize this in the classroom, they could easily align it with some of the lessons they're already required to teach, but it would just have an agricultural flair to it. There's also really neat STEM activities. As y'all know, STEM ideas and projects are really neat for the school system now. And then certainly we have a diverse learner lesson. For anyone familiar with Temple Grandin, she was is a livestock professor that goes through life with autism and shows young people that they can accomplish a lot of really awesome things. And so there's even a lesson in there that shows how you can do anything you want to do if you set your mind to it, and agriculture is certainly a place for that. With less than 2% of our population actively farming, it's really important that we have people that maybe don't come from farms to become interested in agriculture, because there are many jobs every year in the agriculture industry that do not get filled. And so this is a great way to maybe show young people that agriculture is a really great way to make a living. And so that certainly aligns with what we're trying to do in Johnston County as well. So our original work on this application was for $79,900. We're going to be hopefully awarded $40,000. So it's not fully funded, but that is a great chunk to kind of get us started, help us with printing these booklets, the distribution of the booklets, and then certainly supplies that will be needed to conduct these agricultural activities, not only in the classroom, but even for individual families that maybe want to come to the extension office and pick up a kit and do it as an individual family. And so for any young people that complete this, you know, they will be denoted, maybe officially, unofficially, as a junior extension agent here in Johnston County. So I love wearing that title, so hopefully we can have some young people interested as well. So what questions are there?
This operates outside of the 4-H, doesn't it?
Actually, there is a section devoted to 4-H youth development. So the 3 sections of this junior extension agent booklet include agriculture, food and nutrition, and then lastly 4-H youth development.
That's good.
And I'm glad you asked that question to add further clarity. Certainly we have a strong 4-H program here in Johnston County, a part of our extension system. We also have a really robust middle and high school agricultural education curriculum and several FFA chapters. But this is a great way for us to get in touch with those K through 5 students that maybe won't be introduced until later.
Right. Good.
All right, so tell me again, we originally asked for 79?
Yes. So the application that we submitted was for $79,900, and we have been offered $40,000. So we are working on other ways to maybe fill in that difference. I've already filled out another grant application actually to hopefully bridge that together, but I think with the resources we have, we can get it done.
When is the next round?
The next round,
Back trust fund will be
next December.
And just a thought for this board, I mean, I don't have a problem with us fully funding, providing that difference to go ahead and fully fund that. So it's our board decision, but
If it makes it work.
yeah, I would like to say let's make that work. That's this board's
Wow.
pleasure. And you need a little more energy
Yeah.
anyway.
Okay.
I'll do something to pick you up, so.
Get this on camera, Adam.
Any other questions or comments?
I do have a comment, Mr. Chairman. I applaud your efforts because this age group that you're going for, I mean, that is really pivotal, and that's fantastic. In a previous lifetime career, I actually had the opportunity to be an education ranger with the North Carolina Forest Service and taught in the educational state forests. And so we targeted those young children, and the fascination on their face was just amazing when we talked about predators and their prey and forest management and, you know, all the different things that go along with that. So capturing that age group is fantastic. So I really appreciate it, and I agree with the chairman on funding this fully so that you can get started.
All right, any other comments? I mean, I will say we've talked about farmland preservation. We had a great announcement last week with the potential of $12 million. And so it's not all about the land preservation. We're talking about being able to service the operations of the farmers and also education for potentially future folks interested in getting into farming. So it comes in all forms, and I think I had an opportunity that's this side of the table did to go to the Farm City banquet. Definitely I'm more on the city side than the farm side, but I did at least 3 meals a day. I can cover that. But it is good to see, and we had the presenter, I think Ray Starling, mentioned our cooperative extension being the number one, and we talked about JOCO 1 being number one, and I really feel like we do have an organization that is the tops in North Carolina. I can't say enough about what you guys do and the rest of the folks who aren't here today that help make that happen. So thank you all for that as well. So
Nicole, what was that full amount? 79?
$79,900.
Okay.
I hear a motion coming out of. Did you get the number there?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we accept the North Carolina Tobacco Trust Fund grants grant in the amount of $31,106.96 that for the adding value to feeder cattle, and then that we, let me figure out how to word this, accept the $40,000 grant and make up the difference to complete the $79,900 for JOCO Grows Ag Literacy Program. Does that sound right? I think it does. Okay.
Have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Congratulations again, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
I just want to add one quick comment. You know, I've always figured you never pass up an opportunity to brag a little. And a good friend of mine told me one time, even a blind hog can find an acorn every now and then. Well, I found two. I hired both of those. Thank you.
You did good.
You did
Good
good.
job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
First time I've been accused of falling out of trip.
Thank you all.
All right, hang on, I think I flipped the page early here. Hang on a second.
Number 8.
Yeah, okay, I didn't flip it too early. All right, next up, we have the Johnston County Fire Marshal, Ryan Parker, here to present on the Johnston County Fire Service apparatus policy request.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for allowing us to be here today. New Commissioners, thank you. Look forward to working with you here in your new tenure. Before you today, there's a draft policy for your consideration. I have Fire Chief Cleveland Fire Department, Mr. Chris Ellington. He's also the Chair of the Fire Commission. He's going to provide a little more background on this policy request. And I also have with me today Deputy Fire Marshal Jordan Piper. He's been very instrumental in the Fire Commission and the workings of that. We just wanted him to be present also today. So thank you.
All right. Good morning, Chief.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you, Ryan. As Ryan mentioned, the Fire Commission's gone to work on several topics, and we just went through a work session and prioritized some of those. And coming out of that, ahead here was this fire apparatus request form, or policy. This is the beginning of the roadmap, if you will. This is kind of the foundation. We want to evolve it into a replacement plan for our county. But we have to get there somehow, and we have to start with a foundation. When departments come now, it's just kind of at an at-will basis. What we wanted to do is create some kind of order to that would require some information given by each department, a time to look through that information, determine needs, determine financing and things like that. And the policy you have before you outlines that. Instead of coming every month, I know there's a ton of things on the agenda, we're going to come to you once a quarter. And all those requests will be made once a quarter. As you see in the policy, departments will request in January, April, July, and October. That request will go to the Fire Marshal's office with a list of information. And then we will come and make a formal request in the months of March, June, September, and December to the board for final approval. In the policy, it just outlines how everything will go, what information is needed, turned into our fire marshals, and then the fire marshals will go through a process with the fire chief and determine the need, and then come to the commissioners for approval. So instead of reading the whole policy, I'd entertain any questions, and we can dig into those, if you will.
Any questions?
I think it's been put together pretty well.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a comment, if that's all right. I first want to commend the work from the Fire Marshal's office and the Fire Commission. These ladies and gentlemen have really put a lot of effort into all of this, and I've, having come from the fire service in Johnston County for about 30-some years, I've watched this evolve into really something fantastic. And I just want to stop and say that this is, we're making history here, honestly. Y'all are making history. And so I really appreciate that effort. And I think everything moving forward, once this evolution is complete, will become data-driven. And so that we're doing things based on what the data says and what is best interest of the citizens that we serve. And that's fantastic. We can't go wrong when we base it around what's the best interest of all the citizens in Johnston County. So thank you for all your work on this. And I've read the policy, and I think you've done a good job with it. And I do believe it will evolve as time goes on, though.
And like I said, this is just the foundation, and you mentioned how we were changing things and things were evolving, and we're catching the eye of other counties as well.
Yes.
Our team is going to meet with Forsyth County. They've seen what we've done with our tax district, and they're interested in our policies and our ways that we have conducted business, and we're going out to share that as well. So we are doing good things here in the county.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the Johnston County Fire Service apparatus policy.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your work.
Thank y'all.
Appreciate y'all.
And I will say, Mr. Piper, thank you a lot. I know you're working with them. They've got subcommittees, and you're the common denominator in all that, trying to keep that moving. So thank you for your work on that.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to our parks, greenways, and open space. There we go, having it over in the corner
sitting
of
on
you.
the wrong
Yeah, he did. He's sitting on the wrong, that's like church. You're supposed to sit in a certain spot. Now you moved and changed it
It was
up
a
on
full
me.
house when we got here this
All
morning.
right, this is regarding our East Coast Greenway feasibility study and its adoption, so.
Thank you for having us here today. We've got McAdams Group with us, and just a little bit on the East Coast Greenway. We have two state trails going through Johnston County. One's a state trail and a national trail, and that is the East Coast Greenway. We did a feasibility study earlier that went from the Wake County line all the way down to Smithfield, and that was both East Coast Greenway and Mountain Sea Trail. The feasibility study you'll hear about today is from Smithfield to the Harnett County line in Benson, and that is East Coast Greenway up to and Mountains of Sea Trail up to 95, 701, 301 split there. And when it veers off to Benson, it is East Coast Greenway, and the Mountains of Sea Trail goes further down, but we're not talking about Mountains of Sea Trail today for the most part. We're talking about East Coast Greenway. So today we have McAdams Group, and we have Zach Hollick and Joel Strickland, who have been our primaries on that. We've had a great time working with them. They've done a great job. Hope you agree when you get a chance to look over everything and hear their presentation. And we will be asking for adoption of this plan. And what that adoption does for us later on is any DOT projects that come up that have part of that trail in it, DOT assesses and builds the trail for us. So it saves us a lot of money down the road. So I'll turn it over to them, and here you go. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, Chairman Lauder. Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Thank y'all for allowing us this time, and we'll try to move quick on this. But we're very excited to have completed this feasibility study for the East Coast Greenway in Johnston County. As Adrian mentioned, this plan looked at Smithfield to Benson and looked at potential routes for completing that segment of the East Coast Greenway. Again, the East Coast Greenway is a 3,000-mile trail network stretching from Maine to Florida. So getting Johnston County plugged into that network further is a really great thing, and something that we'll continue to work with the county on other plans that we're working on for that implementation. We'll just go through this real quickly and show you some of the areas that we addressed and some of the folks that were involved in the process. When you look at the beginning of the plan, you can see the acknowledgments and the working group members. We appreciate everyone that worked with us on this process. Your staff was excellent. Adrian and Austin are always excellent to work with. But we had a great group of working group members also who played a key role in driving this process, developing the vision, developing the goals of the project, and really also helping us develop recommendations for the project. So their participation was outstanding. You can see how we've kind of laid out the plan. It's really built out into kind of five pieces with an appendix at the end, but we've got an introduction, a study considerations and alternatives development chapter, a community and stakeholder involvement chapter, and evaluation and recommendations chapter, and then we talk a little bit about implementation. How do we make all of these recommendations reality? And, obviously that's, and we'll talk more about that at the end, but that's really the key of this plan. It's not just developing a bunch of recommendations, but we wanted to develop recommendations that you can eventually put on the ground. Yeah, it's fine, and you can go ahead into the study and goals. So you can see the study vision and goals that we worked on with the steering committee. The main things we were looking at were safety, connectivity, project feasibility, local support, and placemaking. Obviously, safety is of utmost importance. Connectivity, we wanted to make sure that your existing trail network connected with this network, and any future plans that you had for trails and greenways as well, that we were making those connections. Project feasibility, that kind of goes back to that implementation piece. Obviously, we wanted to make sure that anything that's recommended is realistic and something that can be implemented into the future. Local support, we didn't want to make any recommendations that didn't have buy-in from the locals. So that's obviously very key. And then placemaking, which really looked into developing a vibrant community-centered space. So we wanted it to be something that would invite people in and something that people would recognize as a good place for them. When you look at the schedule a little bit down there in the right corner, and it may be kind of hard to see, but just wanted to talk you through just a little bit of how we went through this process. We kind of started in July of last year of 2023, wrapped it up about October of this year. And you can see how we kind of bit off the pieces. We looked at the study considerations early in the process, then dove into the route alternatives, developed the recommendations off of that, and then really got into the implementation and the final study. So I won't spend a lot of time on that because we'll talk more about that as we move through this. Yeah, come on.
I'm going to jump ahead. I hope that's going to work, but I'll have to do my page here.
While you're changing gears, I have a question. Is that supposed to follow along with this? Because I'm lost. I can't
No, so
find it.
that's just like a little excerpt. That is specifically
Okay,
executive summary.
okay.
There's a cut sheet
I was
for it.
searching for what you had up there and couldn't find it.
Bigger document.
There's the complete plan.
Ah, okay, never mind.
Yes, sir.
All right, so, carry on.
So I'm going to.
I appreciate the electronic version of that.
We tried to save some trees. And
Thank you.
Oh, it does. Okay, that makes it much easier. So good morning, everyone. I was going to talk us through kind of what is study considerations, which is kind of our existing conditions, as well as alternative development. I'll start out planning level considerations. These are things like census data, the analysis of the high-level demographics of the study area, and this first map is kind of that study area for the feasibility study stretching from Smithfield down into Benson and kind of touching the county line there. That's everything from identifying language barriers, population groups, ages, things of that nature. Then these are kind of all laid out. There's a lot of kind of graphics in here just kind of describing everything that we looked at. And then I will kind of jump forward and touch on real quick natural environment. So this is geography, wetlands, floodways, floodplains, things of that nature that are going to really drive the types of areas we're trying to look for potential greenway corridors and also not look. Then we also look at what are human environment. So this is existing zoning, what are all of the existing NCDOT right-of-ways, planned and existing bicycle pedestrian facilities, crash data, all sorts of things like that that kind of relate to where you might want to try to build the trail. I'm kind of going to flip through these pretty quick to get to some summaries, kind of field observations. I think we had a total of about 3 different site visits. First couple were kind of larger scale, and then once we have really a kind of a final recommendation, we look at specific problem areas, get some better, field observations to kind of help support final recommendations. And so what really kind of comes out of this first phase is this, what we call the spaghetti map, all the alternatives we looked at. There's a number of things that you kind of see grayed back. Those are things which have been removed for consideration from any number of reasons, whether it's cost estimate, it's just not engineeringly feasible, or we've got feedback from, one of the working groups or public engagement or landowners that just, not going to recommend that based on what we heard. And so all of this is kind of documented. There's some smaller scale maps kind of providing context for each of the municipalities. And then all of this is documented in what we call the opportunities and constraints analysis. And so this is a table that really just outlines every single one of these segments that we looked at. It shows kind of who you need to coordinate with. Oh, that did load. You know, what the reason for removal was, and then any other opportunities or constraints that might apply. And once I get to the end of this, I think, Joel, I may turn it back over to you. You're going to run through engagement real quick.
Yeah. We just wanted to give you a quick overview of some of the community engagement that we did. Obviously, we started off with a community engagement plan of how we intended to address engagement throughout the area, how we intended to get people involved. And then we had a series of meetings here which were part of that plan. We had the first working group meeting September 26th. We followed up with 5 additional working group meetings which were held November 28th, February 16th, July 30th, September 5th, and then we wrapped up the last one last month in November. We also did a series of stakeholder meetings to get specific feedback from agencies that we knew we needed to have involved in the process. So we had specific stakeholder meetings with NCDOT Division 4 in November. We had one with the town of Smithfield, Johnston County Public Schools, the town of Benson. We had one with Johnston County. And then we had one with all of our trail partners, which included like North Carolina State Parks, East Coast Greenway Alliance, Friends of Mountains to Sea Trail, and those types of groups. And then we met with the town of 4 Oaks and also met with the NCDOT Rail Division. As far as public meetings go, we held 3 public meetings within the 3 municipalities involved along this route. So we had one in Benson on June 4th, then we had one in 4 Oaks on June 18th, and had one in Smithfield on June 25th, and received a lot of good feedback from those meetings. We also did a few pop-up events. We were at the Ham and Yam Festival in May, and got a lot of good feedback from folks there. And then you can see a little bit more about how we did our digital and online engagement through surveys and those types of things. We've got that information in there as well, and some of the feedback that we received from that. You can see some of the comments included in the plan, or included from public engagement that we've put into the plan. We really heard from a lot of folks who obviously have moved from other areas, from up north or from other areas in the state, and really just want to see these type facilities within the area coming from where they were at. They had more bike options, more pedestrian options, and they just want to see the expansion of it here, which is something we hear a lot, especially in some of the more rural counties in North Carolina. And I'll let Zach talk again about some of the evaluation criteria.
So really what this section kind of going to walk through, we've established a number of evaluation criteria. These are really a qualitative assessment of different things we want to take into consideration when making a final recommendation, right? We're making sure it's constructible. We're making sure it's providing access to all the destinations we heard from the municipalities as well as from the general public. Things like, are there placemaking opportunities? What are the property impacts? What are the environmental impacts? And we kind of try to take that all into consideration. The first step we kind of do, this map here, we take that spaghetti map and kind of try to combine them into different options that get you from Smithfield to Benson. And so each one kind of does something different. One tries to get you the maximum amount of greenway, right, get you off the road as much as possible. One tries to hit specifically the downtowns of each of the towns. Another option tries to hit some key destinations that may not be, might not be specifically the downtowns. And then there's another option that just takes the most direct shot possible. And so there's kind of some more pros and cons outlined here for each of these, but really what we do, this is kind of that output of that matrix, and you can kind of see from the color coding, green is good. So while one route there might have a lot of greens, that kind of helps us tease out, right? What did we hear from people that they really want, and can we craft a preferred alternative that tries to hit the best points of every option that we presented? And so that final option, which is shown on the map here, it's not like any of those other routes, because we heard we touched on earlier, we got some feedback from property owners along the way. We want to take that into consideration. What we hear from people, we value their input seriously, and so we provide final recommendations based on what we heard. And so this final route, it's the combination of the engineering as well as the input we got from people and trying to hit, what the advocates kind of want in terms of a facility, but the realities of landowner coordination and finding the people who want to provide us with assistance for Greenway. And so baked into this report, there's also a lot of design guidance. This is everything from some things from NCDOT, national guidelines from the National Association of City Transportation Officials, that's NACTO, as well as a lot of other documentation that's really included in the appendix as well. There's also kind of some precedent images for what this could look like in terms of paved greenway structure like a boardwalk or a bridge, and then some renderings or graphics as well. We also will touch on in this section greenway amenities, so things like lighting, wayfinding, branding, and signage. Implementation, so how do we take this route and kind of make it reality? One of the big things is going to be breaking this up into more bite-sized chunks, things that can be assigned to the municipalities along the way in the sections where we're passing through their ETJs. The municipalities are going to be a big partner in this. So really we've taken that final route and kind of broken it out into 6 different chunks. There's one in Smithfield, there's 2 in Four Oaks, there's one out in the county kind of between Four Oaks and Benson, and there's 2 others in Benson. I'm kind of going to jump ahead. This is kind of a description of what goes into the cost estimates, but what I'm about to go and kind of focus on a little bit, there's a sheet in your printout that is the cut sheet for the segment that's in Johnston County. And so I'm going to talk through this in a little more detail. And so really what this provides is all of the documentation and outlining of the things you can expect going into designing this segment of trail. And so obviously there's going to be some NCDOT encroachment on this section. I think this is exclusively in NCDOT right-of-way. That's just a strategy to minimize property impacts, right, where we know we're along existing right-of-way. Ideally, we can do everything within existing right-of-way, but that's not really a determination that can be made at this scale. It's once you go to get design, get survey, and get actual surveyed property lines when those can be determined. We're also looking at, what are your permitting needs, what are your environmental impacts, and those steps in the process as well. We kind of do a high-level outline of, the number of property owners and parcels you're going to expect to interact with in the design process, as well as any potential structural design needs as well. Notably, that's any place you're crossing a wetland, a stream, you're going to need some kind of bridge or boardwalk structure to get across that. The other kind of note I'll add to this section is this is something you think about in terms of NCDOT and complete streets that Adrian mentioned earlier, right? We've got a section in here where there's an existing bridge. We're kind of paralleling it with a separate structure for the Greenway, but if at some point in time NCDOT comes to replace that bridge, we've been pretty good, successful working with the division. I think they're building one as part of that bridge over 301 there, just west of Smithfield. They're building a trail side path into that bridge, and so if at such a point in time NCDOT would replace the bridge, I think this is Raleigh Road here over Stony Creek, if they would replace that bridge, there would be an opportunity to get the Greenway Bridge kind of built into their bridge as well, which can be a cost savings for implementation. And so we also kind of touch on what is this going to look like in terms of the sections, right? Ideally, this is going to want to be a side path that's outside of the ditch, but that's contingent on kind of what the right-of-way looks like. And then we also kind of show that overall cost estimate from the baseline estimate, and then escalate it out all the way to 2040, which is kind of our assumed build year based on the rest of the trail, right? Our assumption was kind of you're sort of going to build from start in Smithfield and kind of head to Benson, but the section that's out in the county is kind of going to be the gap, and once you've got pieces on either end, this might be the last one that gets looked at. And I think I'll turn it back over to Joel, who's going to talk through funding.
Yeah, and then really the last piece of all of this, we wanted to present you with some resources for funding and some funding opportunities. We've got a series of potential grants here that can help you with funding the routes. We also, and let me also mention, Zach mentioned NCDOT several times. Working with Campo, working with the RPO will be instrumental in getting some of this built as well. And, to get projects through them and to the TIP for funding, they have to be documented in an adopted plan. So getting these projects in a plan like this is key for getting state funding or federal funding in the future. So, we wanted to make sure that we included as much of this as we could. And then anything that doesn't make it into the state transportation improvement program, we've got these grant options in here that may be additional options for your funding sources. And then, we talk a little bit about partnerships. obviously there's a lot of agencies within the area that coordinating with them will help you succeed with the implementation of this, this greenway. So again, your MPO, your RPO, all the municipalities are very key. The towns, of course, as I just mentioned, NCDOT Division 4 will be integral in this, and they were integral in our process of planning this as well, but moving forward, they'll be integral in implementation as well. And then I want to mention one more thing too. You know, you've got several plans going on within the region. So, you know, with this plan, all the recommendations that come from this plan will be rolled into the comprehensive greenways and trails plan that we've just embarked on with the county. And then they'll also be rolled into the comprehensive transportation plan. So you'll have that uniformity across all three plans, so there won't be any disconnect there. I think that's the main things we really wanted to hit. We've got an action plan here just to give you some ideas of, you know, short-term, long-term, and medium-term and perpetual items into the future, but give you a little bit of idea of potentially how to lay out some pieces of this implementation. And then there's also some maintenance recommendations toward the end also. But I think that hits the real gist of the plan. We've got some additional resources and some additional information on what went into the plan included in the appendices. But if you have any questions, we'll be glad to answer those. But again, it's been a pleasure for us working with your staff and working with your working groups to get this plan completed.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
You talked about property lines. Would this thing be on a fee simple conveyance, or is it on recorded easements, similar to utility easements?
Yeah, I'll let you talk more to that, Zach.
I think that could be determined up on the property owner basis, however the property owner wanted to do it, right? We're at a scale where we can't really go and figure out even the area of easement yet. It's just such a big area. But that's something that would be determined. Just whatever the property owner wanted, I think, is what you got to do.
That wouldn't jeopardize like funding from NCDOT Division 4 or anything?
I don't believe so. I think the big thing we see, specifically for easements and some sources of state funding, you want willing property owners, so you want people who want to work with the trail. And so I think that's the bigger thing than the specific, I guess, mechanism for the easement.
The other question I have is, what was the average response from landowners? Was it, generally speaking, were they in favor of this? Or
generally, the landowners we got responses from, they specifically did not want it. And so that caused us to tweak the route to not go through some routes that it would get us off the roadway and create a nicer experience. But if they're not a willing landowner, that's going to jeopardize a lot of opportunity and probably push the timeline out. Sure. If you're trying to wait for someone to change their mind. Because greenways aren't like old transportation projects, right? No one's going to come in and eminent domain anything for a greenway. And we don't want to do that because that's not going to build any kind of community asset. No one's going to be happy that that happens, and it's not going to help really bring people together.
Okay.
All right, any other questions? No, I would just comment that it is good to know that we're getting on the path of getting things together to build into the comprehensive transportation plan update, and then get into Campo for potential funding and Upper Coastal Plain, RPO. So that is good to see that we're moving along and positioning ourselves well for Mr. Cross to help get more grants, but to move forward in that direction. So thank you guys for the work in your team. And Adrian, it looks like you have some other comments. Yeah.
As Zach said, we cannot use eminent domain for any of this trail because it's state trail. Right. For it to be identified and dedicated as state trail, it cannot be taken through eminent domain at all. Right. So that's one thing. So we have to, we always want to, but we have to listen to the landowner's intent of what they want done with their property. We did have, you asked Zach about most of the landowner sensitivity. We've had a little bit of both. We did have one landowner that came to all three meetings and was adamant that he did not want to deal with trail going through there, but he had dealt with the railroad, he had dealt with power lines, he had dealt with 14 different things, and he'd had stuff stolen out of his property that he attributed to being on the railroad. You know, so experiences develop people's attitude toward trail. So we, you know, and we always work with that with our trail situations. You know, sometimes we've been planning to put out a news release on trails and the fact that they're not the danger that people perceive. They're a very good community asset. And we'll do that soon. We haven't had that opportune time yet. But with that said, our next step in this is to take this plan to the 3 towns that are affected, and we'll present it to them over the course of the next couple of months and try to also get them to adopt it. So what we'd like to do today is kind of let it sit a little bit, because I know it's a lot to digest. All this information that we get is for Austin to be able to build good grants. And, when you go for a PARTIF grant or an LWCF grant or any of these DOT grants, you have to have all of this data. And that's why this document is just so robust. Johnston County is uniquely situated to be one of the last places that needs to be filled in on this trail. So the state is really interested in Johnston County on the East Coast Greenway and the Mountains of Sea Trail. So I think we have a good chance at looking at some state funding. The towns have a good chance at looking at some funding, because, when it goes through the town, it's really the town's responsibility. We're going to help them out all we can, but it is their responsibility when it goes through that town. What we'll be responsible for at the end of the day, when all this gets built 40 years from now, hopefully sooner than that, because trail cost goes up every year. But what we'll be responsible for are the parts that are in the county. So just keep that in mind. But any other questions?
I know from experience with JCATS and other boards that the feasibility study is an important aspect before DOT can get involved. Is that something that needs to be done today, adopting this?
No, we've not got a grant that we're applying for in the next couple of days.
Okay.
Probably not before first of the year. If we can get it, if we can get your opinion on it, because that's what it is. I mean, at the end of the day, it's whether y'all want to adopt this plan or not. Right. But if we can get that adoption by the end of January, we would be very happy.
Good.
So let me ask, so I'm not sure the schedule for the update of the comprehensive transportation plan, but I'm sure they're dovetailed. If it's going to reference this, it needs to be done before that so they can complete the transportation update.
And we've actually talked to them, because McAdams is also doing transportation,
right.
Or have part of the transportation plan. But we've talked about leaving a spot in the appendix so we can put this in. So we've thought ahead about that as being part of it.
Okay. And I'll just say, since we have 2 brand-new members, and well, I think it's Commissioner Stovall's first time having a chance to kind of look at this too, is we'll take a look at it and make sure we get it on the agenda, get approved in time to get into the transportation plan update.
And the other thing I'll mention is that this plan was funded in totality by DOT.
Right.
So what we've had done today. And we've got the other one coming up, which is a county-wide master plan, which will encompass the work we've done on these 2 feasibility studies, but also give us a spider web throughout the whole county that shows where we potentially need trails in the future, and hopefully can get them in place to connect schools, parks, and light commerce and neighborhoods.
Okay, good. I was going to say, add a couple of things on there. You're talking about connection. I know we're looking at farmland preservation and connecting that and other open space that we preserve, whether that's through TLC or soil and water grants and all that. So there's a lot of opportunities to connect those things as well.
Bryant and his team, we're already talking about it, and the very energetic young lady has already talked about walking through the edges of farms and being able to look at sweet potatoes and see what they are and being able to do things like that. And we definitely want to do that. In the open space world, we embrace farmland. We call it working land, and that's what it is. And it's another component of open space. So when we start we want to preserve all the farmland we can, because it gets us closer to that goal of 15% of our county-based land preserved. And that's what we're excited about that.
Well, good. And I would just say, along the same with the quality of life that it brings. I know, I guess who mentioned it about the quality of life, and people are coming. I think it was Joel, about coming and kind of looking for those things to do and take their families on. And I will say, tied into that, I've seen it in Clayton, and I'm sure Smithfield would say the same thing. As trails begin to develop, the resistance and reluctance to have trails on properties. I know I saw in Clayton that became, something that folks wanted is access to trails. So instead of a negative, it became a positive. And I suspect as this continues to play out, we will see more of a transition in thinking from a negative to have a trail on or near your property to becoming positive.
One of the things we heard at the Ham and Yam from people who were coming from other places and coming in, they were surprised we didn't have trails. And one of the reasons we don't have trails here like they do in some other states, especially northern states, is they use eminent domain a lot more than we do. And they'll use it for trails, they use it for everything. But it's just not a option for us to do that. And I wouldn't want it to be an option because we want willing partners. We want willing partners to help us out because that's the only way it works.
Adrian, for those landowners who did not want these trails, was there a consistent reason given for why they did not want it?
Perception of crime and perception of private property loss, I think, were the two that came up most. But in our research across the nation, we don't see that as a consistent item that happens. There are pinpoints that happen. I mean, and that's one of the reasons we haven't done some of the articles that we talked about, because we have an instance, and it's just like anything else. You have instances that get blown up. I won't say blown out of proportion, but blown up at the time. But you got to think every day how many people are using a trail. It's just like a road. How many people are using a road, and you see one bad wreck, and you say, "Oh, roads are dangerous." Well, yeah, they are.
Well, I have some experience with this because we developed quite a bit of, or allocated land for greenways with the city of Raleigh for state properties in the capital. And some of the concerns we had when they were passing right close to a major prison was that it provided an access point for people to discreetly come up to the fence and pass contraband to the inmates.
Right.
And that in fact happened. Women's prison sits on the Walnut Creek Greenway, and that particular greenway is in a neighborhood that has quite a bit of crime, and that greenway has been plagued by that crime. So there are some instances where the public may be endangered if they don't take proper precautions in certain areas.
Yeah.
And what we saw from our experience is that if you've got areas that are very remote and it's an opportunity zone for somebody who does have, unfortunately, nefarious intent.
Yeah.
So I'd be curious to know what, if anything, can be done to help promote safety on these greenways in that regard. Though each crime may be limited in the studies, it does exist.
Yeah. Oh, well, it does. You're right. And it's just like anywhere else. Patrol, actually, use of the greenway is the biggest deterrent. If you've got people walking through where somebody doesn't have time to be by themselves and do those things that you're talking about, then that helps more than anything else. So use and promotion of the greenways and making sure that people understand that there are some places, just like highways, just like neighborhoods, that you need to be more cautious than you are on other places is the other thing. So and we'll work on those as we get these things built, and we'll try to make sure we're not putting them through any of those places. But we can't guarantee that one place won't pop up and we'll knock it down and another place will pop up. But I'm sure Clayton has the same issues, Smithfield has the same issues with the greenways that already are in place. But overall, the ability to use them as a transportation method does overwhelmingly make it a desirable option in the neighborhoods and in the towns.
All right. Thank you all. And we'll look forward to this being on, hopefully, our first meeting in January. We'll take this and can adopt this.
As always, thank you for your support and your questions.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next item, and items are a series of presentations by Chandra Farmer, our Utilities Director, and then we have one file still on infrastructure on broadband. So, Ms. Farmer, I will turn it over to you for a little bit.
Okay, good morning. Before I begin on the first item, I wanted to note that the next three items, the real intent behind those is to ensure that the county fully allocates and commits our ARPA funding, that's American Rescue Plan Act funds that we received that were previously designated for water and sewer projects. They're required to be encumbered by the end of 2024. So we are tweaking these project budgets and taking advantage to ensure we fully maximize these budgets so we can ensure those funds are encumbered. The first one that we have is our Central Johnston County Regional Wastewater Treatment Facility. In February of '24, the board awarded a construction contract for preliminary treatment facility improvements at this plant and adopted a capital project budget. We are looking to revise that project budget in order to add a very large emergency repair that has been required. We started in August on some major repairs to our influent portion of the plant, some influent manholes and piping that has to be replaced, modified, and of course bypass pumping into the plant is required during this time frame. So we would like to add that into this construction contract. We've been able to identify some savings with the existing contractor. We did not note that, so we've kind of tweaked the budget to show that we're going to have some savings on this project due to the existing bypass pumping that's going on, and the original contractor will be able to minimize what they will need to do. So the revised project budget slightly increases that ARPA funding and maintains the state appropriations funding that we already had. I'll be happy to answer any detailed questions you may have on this item.
All right. Any questions for Ms. Farmer?
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the revisions to the existing capital project budget.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next
Okay.
item.
The second project we have is our 210 wastewater treatment facility diversion projects. This project was originally adopted with and included some revenue bonds in 2023 is when we originally started this project, and it includes several small projects throughout our wastewater collection system to ensure we divert wastewater to where it needs to go, and this all corresponded with the construction of our new 210 wastewater treatment facility that came online back in July of '24. You can see that we have increased in the budget the ARPA fundings. We are proposing to add just over $871,000 of ARPA funds into this project. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have, but we are requesting approval of this revised project budget.
Okay. Any questions for Ms. Farmer on this? All right, if not, do I hear a motion?
Chairman, I make a motion to approve the revisions to the existing capital project budget and capital project ordinance.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Anything else on this?
I'm glad Ms. Farmer is doing her homework on this and get those funds captured while we can.
Yep.
That is designated. You don't have to spend it before that deadline, do you?
That's correct. We have to spend it by the end of '26.
Right.
And we want to spend every penny, not get
Yes, we do.
Indeed.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Okay.
Next.
The next project is our Lower Neuse water supply budget. You may recall last month I brought before the board a memorandum of agreement with the town of Clayton as we begin this project and partner with them on stage 1 of phase 1 to develop our new water supply. This new water supply project includes a raw water main that will be with an intake on the Neuse River at Richardson Bridge Road. That raw water main will go all the way into Princeton to where the county owns land at an existing abandoned quarry off of Old Cornwallis Road. We'll construct a new water treatment plant there. And then the project will also include some finished water mains to put that treated water back into our water distribution system. So as we start the project, currently the budget only includes our initial technical services for our owner's advisor, who is working with us in the town of Clayton. We are recommending that we go ahead and increase the contract with the owner's advisor to allow us to, again, add ARPA funds into this project and secure the contract with our owner's advisor through the end of 2026. actually, the contract with them will likely be through 2027, but the funds that we know we'll be using from ARPA will be through the end of 2026. The proposed project budget is there before you. You can see the ARPA funds appropriation that's been added, the town of Clayton's obligations, and then the county's additional obligations we would fund through water system development fees. I will remind you that the memorandum of agreement with Clayton was for Stage 1, and it was really only through the end of a preliminary phase. They were obligated to $500,000 originally, so assuming this assumes that the town of Clayton will proceed with additional future stages and contribute additional funding. If they fail to do so, we don't negotiate another agreement with them. We would pay that balance through the county's water system development fees.
All right, any questions on this for Ms. Farmer? Did I hear a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the funding a portion of the project with remaining ARPA funds and approve the revised project budget.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on this? All right. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion carries.
Chandra, real quick, just for discussion purposes, curious to know if the town of Clayton does have to take on Phase 2, what kind of time frame are we looking at?
So we would intend to negotiate the next phase of an agreement with them in early 2025.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I believe this brings us to your final item.
Yes, the final item is a proposed amendment to a memorandum of understanding that is between Johnston County, NCDOT, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. This agreement was originally adopted in 2005, and it expanded the county's previously adopted, which was originally formed in the late 90s, the environmentally sensitive area in the county. This agreement, it added additional provisions to ensure environmental protection measures were associated with new development that occurred in these environmentally sensitive areas. The environmentally sensitive area currently includes the watersheds of Little Creek, Swift Creek, White Oak Creek, and portions of the Little River. So this agreement is really specific to those areas and additional restrictions in those areas. We currently have those restrictions incorporated into the county's stormwater management ordinance. We are proposing revisions to our stormwater management ordinance to address several issues and concerns we have seen over time as development occurs within the county, some of those being immediate downstream flooding, some of those, and which also relates to impervious area restrictions and exceedances within the county with new development. And as we look at these proposed modifications to the county stormwater ordinance, it affects the provisions of this amendment of this agreement that was adopted in 2005. So we've been working with U.S. Fish and Wildlife and DOT to see what they would be agreeable to as we make these modifications to our ordinance. And one of the major changes of the proposed amendment is we would eliminate the county's land dedication program. Our land dedication program is required for development that exceeds certain impervious area limits, and it requires the developer to deposit money into the county's land dedication program, where we would then take that and go buy permanent conservation easements, or it allows a developer to purchase their own and put in place permanent conservation easements. Unfortunately, that program has, the intent of the program has been met, but we've just really not seen the protections that were originally intended. So as we look at revising our stormwater management ordinance, we want to eliminate that program, but continue to protect the environment and meet the original intent of the agreement by requiring more strict or more strenuous attenuation measures for development. So right now, the county stormwater ordinance requires attenuation of a 1-year, 24-hour storm, which is a very minimal requirement when we're talking about new development and so much impervious area being added throughout the county. So this agreement in those environmentally sensitive areas and in the Middle Creek watershed would require attenuation through a 100-year storm event. So we could eliminate these payments for impervious area having to go into this land dedication program, but we'd be able to implement and put in place on the ground at development stage this attenuation that would handle this additional impervious area. One thing that's very important that this does is I think it protects our citizens and our future citizens. Number one, it protects citizens downstream from some of the flooding issues that we've had and some stormwater impacts we've had from new development. But it also aids with new development where our current ordinance, we have developers who design at that threshold, that minimum impervious area limit, so they don't have to do additional attenuation. So they'll design at that small limit. They'll put impervious area limits on a lot, on a plat, that's recorded. A property owner buys that property. They may have 4,000 square feet of impervious area as the limit. Home is built, driveway's there already, and then they decide they want to build a detached garage or put in a pool, and there's no impervious area left for that homeowner in the future to improve their property. And so this would eliminate those problems that we have been seeing for the last several years. We do have measures for people in those situations right now to come in and implement something like a rain garden or a rain barrel or something like that, which is good. It gives them that solution. But over time, that's not the best solution to protect downstream property owners. It doesn't offer that attenuation that's really needed associated with this new development. So I know, I'm sorry, I've said a lot. Those are the main changes of the where we are going with this amendment and what the changes we're looking at with the stormwater management ordinance. We intend to bring the stormwater management ordinance back to the board in early '25. We've previously had one stakeholders meeting, and we will be having another stakeholders meeting with the development community in January. Today, we're asking for approval of the proposed amendment and those provisions, though, on the agreement.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I know in recent years, FEMA has changed their flood maps in light of history. Has that had any impact on those designated environmentally sensitive areas?
It does to some extent. In the environmentally sensitive area, our ordinance prohibits any development in a 100-year floodplain. So, throughout some portions of the county, you could build in a floodplain if you're...
They redefine that 100-year.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
okay.
it will continue to prohibit development in that area.
John, I've got a question about the wording of new residential developments not served by public sewer shall be designed with a minimum impervious area of 6,000 square foot per lot. What exactly does that mean by minimum?
So this is the criteria that we are looking at in trying to ensure future property owners have sufficient impervious area to develop their property. Like I said earlier, what we've seen now is some may have a minimum limit of 3,000 square feet or 4,000 square feet, and that's just not sufficient on most single-family lots that are, 1 acre, for example. The reason we put not public sewer is when a development is, let's say it's a PUD or something that may have smaller lots with special zoning associated with it. 6,000 may or may not be reasonable depending on the type of, they may not need that if it's a very small lot. So we would have to look at those and evaluate those on a case-by-case basis, but we'd still require that attenuation to that 100-year storm event.
It sounds counterintuitive. It seems to me it ought to say a maximum impervious area of 6,000 square feet.
Yeah, but what it's getting at, I thought about that too, and I thought about it a long time. When they designed that, that's what all it can be. Well, they might build a 3,000 square foot house, but that buyer now has a buffer. He can go up to 3,000 more. That's the limit they put in.
Well, it's semantics then.
Yeah, so it'll still take, if the subdivision has whatever the number the subdivision has, it'll have more, and historically it's been that number divided by a number of lots, and that's it. Or maybe they spread it out a little bit different, but that's typically what it is, and I think the big number is still going to stay the same, but it does give, and I know we allow, I don't say exceptions, but it is exceptions when the individual owner comes in and wants a swimming pool or extend their driveway or whatever.
Gives them more.
So many of them now, when they construct the existing home, it takes almost the entire amount of allocated impervious area for that property.
Yeah.
So when the homeowner comes in 2 or 3 years and wants to improve, they can't do anything.
Okay. I understand what you're saying. It just seemed counterintuitive.
Yeah, I understand. It does. I understand where you're, yes.
Now, I have one other comment. You talked about the FEMA flood maps changing. We've seen flood maps change rapidly, and the basis is we're adding so much impervious surface in places that have high development. And my personal opinion about the design storm of 1 year storm, that's like 2.75 inches in a day's time, which you can get that in a heavy thunderstorm, easily exceed that. But this only applies to these specific watersheds. Are we looking at
For
doing?
this agreement, but we would include attenuation through higher storms throughout the county for all new development.
Okay,
The proposed ordinance revision may not go quite up to a 100-year storm in every situation, but the proposed revisions will include additional beyond that 1 year. Yes.
I'm glad to hear that that's being considered, because I think that is desperately needed.
Yeah, you're right.
And can you roughly describe the Middle Creek watershed, where that middle of the county, up north, south?
So that would be the kind of central western portion of the county, when you're talking more like the McGee's area, Highway 210.
Crantock
area.
Road.
Mhm, Crantock, that area, that drains back towards Smithfield.
Okay.
It floods every time there's a
Yeah.
sprinkle.
Yeah. Well, that's what I just wanted, so the public would, until Commissioner Stovall point is, yeah, that's a relatively small area, and looking at the whole county, because that was one of the things that I was going to talk about is the flooding as we look, in the western part, we have impervious surface, a lot of it there with development, and it heads east, and we get flooding in Smithfield and all the places beyond. It's going to be more than a subdivision at a time fix, but I think this starts to address some of those
These watersheds,
concerns.
what's already in the ESA, the Little Creek, Little River, Swift Creek, plus this Middle Creek one, that is the largest development area of the county. You know, this 100-year attenuation provision will certainly assist with a lot of that new development.
You ready for a motion?
Minimize impact.
I have a couple questions, sorry.
Go ahead.
Will you, and a lot of this is for public knowledge too, for those that are watching, because I don't think everybody knows about the land dedication program. Can you expand on that a little bit as far as if the funds go away, how much funds are we talking about? And I know it's being made up on the other side, so maybe you could put that in layman's terms too.
So if a development exceeds, and I cannot remember the numbers off the top of my head, but for commercial development and residential development, there's a certain percentage if they exceed. I want to say it's 20 or 30% for residential currently, and it's a higher amount for commercial. If they exceed that, then the developer has to pay to the county a certain amount based on how much they exceed their percent, based on the actual amount of impervious area. And they purchase is based on a per acre fee that they would purchase that, they pay that to the county's land dedication fund. We have used that money with Triangle Land Conservancy in some of their projects. We've also had developers who try to do their own permanent conservation easements. And you know, they try to try not to exceed that. Really what they try to do is not to exceed that impervious area limit. They try to stay below that any way they can. And that comes back to minimizing that proposed impervious area and say they're designing below that limit. So then there's not future impervious area for others to develop. So as far as funds going away, I think we have spent, it's only been a couple $100,000 since this program's been in place, and this program started in the late 90s. It's been in place since the original stormwater ordinance was established and adopted.
Perfect. I just kind of wanted to make that a little bit more public. And then with this, just so I'm clear, this will go into effect immediately if we approve the amendment.
It would not go into effect until we follow up with the ordinance adoption. So our stormwater ordinance would also have to be adopted before this becomes effective for design for a development.
That was my question.
Yep.
And that pay-in for mitigation, I guess, in the grand scheme of things, that might work, but that guy downstream from that particular property is still going to get flooded.
Yep.
Should we change that and do away with that mitigation possibility? You know what I mean?
And that's what we would do. So when we eliminate this land dedication program, it will do that. They will have the project-specific protection that helps, that is project-specific continuation.
Yes, that's the problem with it.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the proposed amendment number 1 to the memorandum of understanding between the North Carolina Department of Transportation, United States Fish and Wildlife Service, and the County of Johnston.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and second. Any other discussion?
I have one
Yes, sir.
discussion point. When we start modifying the stormwater retention and runoff characteristics, it does have a construction cost impact. and that's going to drive up the cost of individual family homes. Now, that's running contrary to a popular political agenda now that we need more low-cost housing options, to the extent that our General Assembly is actually talking about revoking the zoning authority from all 100 counties and taking that over themselves to try to force low-cost housing options in areas where otherwise the local governments have said are not really appropriate. And I think that is a sad direction that would go down that path. But the builders lobby is very strong in the state, and I foresee that there may be some pushback on this particular rule change here. So I would hope that we would stand strong against that, because this is desperately needed.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I have a question just along this line. Is this initiative being, having lived on the Neuse River for the last 20-some years, largely what happens here in Smithfield is a result of what happens in Wake County. And so when they start releasing water out of the dams, they do different things like that. We see the outcome of that. Is there a regional approach to addressing some of these things, like with surrounding counties? You know, what we do here affects the folks downriver, whereas the people upriver is what really has a dramatic effect on us. I even watched the rainfall. The rainfall totals here is not what I'm concerned with. It's what falls in Wake County, because it's going to come down in a day or so, and then that's when my backyard floods. So is that more of a...
So the state and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and FEMA have looked at several different flood studies at a regional basis and looking at the basin as a whole, particularly the Neuse River Basin. You know, I don't know that they've found projects to move forward with. You know, I see those as long-term approaches.
Right.
I feel like this is the best thing that we can do short-term to protect our citizens, especially on these smaller events.
Yeah.
You get a 500-year storm, you know, which we've had. That was, Hurricane Matthew. And
What we'll do is control the runoff off these localized sites here in the county. It'll reduce the flash flooding potential that you see. The flooding we get from the releases out of Falls Lake is more of a delayed action, because they're trying to reduce that water level to manage so that over top the dam. But what we see around here that's flooding out houses is local streams. You know, we've had quite a few deaths in recent years where people try to cross flash flooded highways, and there may not be a culvert there. It looks like it. It doesn't look that deep.
Typically in those events, you have a rise of water from the flash flooding. The water recedes down some, and then it rises again as the Wake County water comes down, or the upstream water.
Yeah, well, that's the delay action there.
So
You
you got two different hits there.
You can more readily predict that than you can the flash flooding events.
Ain't much you can do about it, though. Stand there and watch it rise.
Yeah, that may be something that I could bring up with the Central Pines Regional Council is visit that and see, what we can do. But I know that's primarily the Corps of Engineers controlling the release of that water. So
I think we have an obligation certainly to do our part, and I think that's fantastic. We should, but I would hope that on a regional basis that everyone is taking that same approach.
All right. Yep. Thank you for that reminder. I was trying to. So we have a motion and a second, and we have discussed it. So all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
All right. Next up, we have a presentation of Brightspeed Broadband update, and I think we have Steve Brewer here to address that for us. This is long awaited. This is one of those that seems like we started forever ago, and due to several complications not related to Brightspeed, it got a late start, so we're here to hear some good news.
We're well on our way, and you're correct. Different actions through General Assembly and whatnot have caused this process to stretch out a bit longer than I think most would like. But again, my name is Steve Brewer. I'm Director of Governmental Affairs for Brightspeed. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you for spending some time with me or inviting me to participate today. I've got a slide that we're going to share with you real quickly, and then we'll talk about the various stages that our project is in.
Is it the same one as that?
It is.
Yeah, okay. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think there was an original map, and then there was one that was changed out this morning, so.
This one is fine.
Okay, just making sure.
So the map that we have on the screen here depicts two different types of locations scattered throughout the county. The blue dots on the map are part of the Great Grant Award that was awarded to us some time ago. Those locations, the blue dots, again, they're 3,925 that were officially awarded. Those come with a contractual completion date of December 31, 2025, so basically 1 year from now. Those locations should all be open for sale, and customers should be able to order broadband services through those. And as a matter of fact, we actually have a small number that are open for sale today. As we currently sit, those locations, about 3,200 of them are in what we refer to as the design stage. That's a process where we'll identify all of the addresses, verify all of the addresses, determine the appropriate fiber route, be they on pole or underground. And then once that is completed, that gets handed off to a local engineer who is extremely familiar with the area, and they will validate all of the work that's been done, as well as commence with the ordering of equipment that's necessary to complete the project. And so, again, about 3,200 of those prims are within that phase. They will very quickly, in early 2025, be turned over to our construction team. As we sit today, about 700 are already in the construction process, and just over 250 are actually open for sale. So construction's been completed, consumers can actually order the product. And again, the service that we're delivering is a fiber-based product. It will take fiber right to the doorstep, to the home or business, and immediately customers will be able to subscribe to speeds of at least 1 gigabyte, and it's a 1 gigabyte symmetrical product. So that simply means you can get the same speed coming into your home or business as you get going out. Typically, particularly for residents, the speed coming in to your home is more important. It allows you to consume more products. It allows you to put more smart products on your home network. But certainly for businesses that are seeking to share products or to get out of their location, that symmetrical speed, that upload speed, if you will, is very important. So for the vast majority of these locations, right away, once they're open for sale, you'll be able to order the 1 gigabyte product. In many locations, though, we're able to turn the speeds up to 2 gig fairly quickly, so consumers or businesses can again subscribe to a 2 gig symmetrical product. And as a matter of fact, Corning, who's also based here in North Carolina, Brightspeed being based in Charlotte, but Corning is our fiber provider, and they've advised us that ultimately the network is capable of carrying up to 10 gigabytes symmetrical. So what we're putting in is really a future-proof product. Very excited about that, and again, I'll be happy to come and meet with you at some point next year, but the project should be completed end of year next year. The other dots that you see on the map, the gold dots, if you will, are locations that are eligible for future grant projects. And what I mean by that is those are locations throughout the county that don't currently have access to the federal government's definition of broadband services, which is 100 by 20. That means 100 coming into your home or business, 20 megabyte going out of your home and business. And again, remember, what we're putting in initially, customers will be able to get 1 gigabyte, which is essentially 1,000 meg in each direction. So significantly higher than the federal government's definition of broadband. But again, the gold dot locations are eligible for future grant opportunities. As a matter of fact, and I can't get into a whole lot of detail here because we're in somewhat of a quiet period, but the state of North Carolina has just opened up as of last week CAB 2.0. That stands for Completing Access to Broadband. They have roughly $278 to $280 million of broadband grants that will be completed, quite honestly, sometime. They will all be awarded sometime in the first quarter of 2025. And then right on the heels of that, the North Carolina Department of Information Technology will begin administering a program referred to as BEAD, B-E-A-D. That is a federally funded grant program. The state of North Carolina, through NCDIT, will administer it. And the state has $1.5 billion of funds. So we've got a little over $1.7 to $1.8 billion of broadband grant funds available to it. With that, we should be able to get, and when I say we as a state, we as an industry, should be able to get Johnston County to universal coverage. So that would, between those two grant programs, those 5,980 locations that are currently grant eligible locations should be satisfied. That's it in a nutshell, but I'd be happy to take on any questions.
I have a few questions for you.
Yes, sir.
Excuse me. The grant funds, is there any penalty if the work is not completed on the established time frame?
There are clawback provisions. There are provisions in there that allow for an extension of time, and then if the project just simply were not completed, there are clawback provisions in the authorizing legislation. Yes, sir.
Brightspeed's existing customers,
Yes, sir.
if they are being underserved now, are they given any priority for the fiber if they're on copper now?
Well, these locations that are grant eligible, that is dictated by the state. The state goes through a process of vetting all of the locations within a particular county or project area, and they really make that determination. Now, what's not shown on the map here is that using our own private investment dollars, we're also constructing roughly another 20,000 locations with fiber in this county that are not part of the grant program. So when you say are they given preference, it's a competitive grant program, and the state really drives those rules around the locations that are served. So when we put in an application, we are in effect identifying we're able to serve very specific addresses for this particular project, and that's what's ultimately awarded.
You mentioned that the government standard is a 100/20.
Yes, sir, 100 by 20.
And what is you consider acceptable level of service for your copper network now?
What level?
What is your input, download, and upload speed that you would expect for your basic service now that you're providing on copper?
So the product that a customer is able to subscribe to on copper is DSL. DSL is distance sensitive. So depending upon how close you are to the serving equipment determines what speeds you can get. The more rural you are, the slower your speeds are going to get. The great thing about fiber is we don't fight that distance sensitivity. So I can tell you that the speeds that are capable of being delivered over DSL vary wildly. If you are right next to the enabling equipment, you can get a speed very close to 100 by 20. But the further away you get from it because of the distance sensitive nature of DSL, that speed's going to degrade. And it's a component of the technology. The copper network, quite honestly, was originally designed to deliver voice-grade services, and we've been able to enhance it to deliver, broadband-type services. However, we are working diligently, Brightspeed is working diligently to become exclusively a fiber company.
So, your question might be my question.
Well, my question gets back to, I don't have Brightspeed service. I have another provider, but I've got a number of people I know are existing customers of Brightspeed. And to be honest with you, they don't have very nice things to say about the maintenance of the network. I've got a gentleman who sent me a screenshot this morning. He says, my download speed is 1.21 megabytes. My upload is 0.15 megabytes. And he says, I've been paying $50 a month, and I've had no speeds greater than this for 2 years now.
He clearly, to have speeds such as that, he clearly lives in a situation where he is a significant distance away from the serving equipment. And that's what these grant programs are designed to do, is to enable providers to be able to invest in these.
He has applied for upgrade twice and been denied, and he says the service tech has told him that the junction at the intersection on his road, most of the ports don't work, and there's no further ports to improve it. So he's asking what is being done to maintain the existing network if this junction is
what's
degraded.
being done is the transition to fiber. I mean, ultimately, that is the solution, is transitioning all of the customers to fiber. I mean, that is Brightspeed's goal, to be exclusively a fiber company.
Well, it implies that if you don't maintain that system and you're investing your own money in fiber, then a lot of these underserved customers' fees are not going to provide service. They're going toward to build a fiber network. So the question I asked earlier about the customers who have got inadequate service now, are they given any priority to get fiber to them?
So we are actively building fiber both in the cities and in the rural areas, typically in large part by ways of broadband grants. And that's what this state's $1.7 billion program that will be administered, again, the roughly $280 million just started last week, and then in the first quarter of next year, it'll be about $1.5 billion, and that is designed to take fiber out to those locations that would otherwise be uneconomical to build fiber to.
Well, I understand that, but I see a customer that's paying $50 a month, and he's getting, basically, if he gets a phone call, his TV drops out. When you got speeds here at this level, it looks like there ought to be some sort of discounted rate for inadequate service. It kind of gives the impression that their money is going to fund fiber to put the other places that are higher density populations, and rural customers don't matter.
Well, keep in mind, though, rural customers that have an extremely long loop length, as would be the situation that you're describing here with those speeds there, the cost of maintaining a fiber network with an extremely long loop length is significant. I can't sit here and give you an exact cost per customer per month, but maintaining the copper networks, because quite frankly, there's a lot of instances where the equipment that is that supports the copper network simply isn't being manufactured anymore. That's why it's so critically important for us to get over to fiber as quickly as possible. Fiber is the solution. Fiber is the long-term solution.
Obviously, I don't disagree with that. It's just it gets back to how are you prioritizing who gets that fiber is the question.
Obviously, their ROI and density is going to be driving those private dollars.
No question about it.
Yeah.
I think we talked about it before. I'm in this little dot of nothingness over here, so I, for one, would be excited for anything to come through.
Well, the great thing about it is the state, again, has a program that has just opened up last week. And then on the heels of that, as soon as that is awarded, the state already has $1.5 billion from the federal government. And that process will begin, I would say, roughly end of first quarter. So, you know, and as a requirement for the state of North Carolina to participate in the federal government's BEAD program, which we have, that's where the 1.5 is coming from, it is to get us to universal coverage of speeds of at least 100 by 20. Now, when we are awarded a grant, we are at a minimum delivering speeds of 1 gig by 1 gig, which is 10 and 50 times faster than the federal government's requirement to meet the definition of broadband. And again, typically very quickly thereafter, we're able to turn that up to 2 gigabytes. So it is, It is coming. I know it is frustrating if you are a customer that does not have an adequate speed, but it is coming. North Carolina has proven, to be honest with you, we're very fortunate in the state of North Carolina with our Department of Information Technology. They have been at this a bit longer than all of the funds that are associated with COVID relief through the ARPA program, if you will. We've been at, our General Assembly started appropriating funds years ago, albeit at much smaller dollar amounts, $5 and $10 million a year. So, but this $1.5 billion program is designed to get the state across the finish line.
Are you proactively informing your customers when they can expect to be upgraded to fiber?
We have a system on our internet site, it's on brightspeed.com, that customers can go and enter their address, and when the service is about to be installed in their area or made available in the area, it will notify them. And then certainly as the locations are built out, we do a great deal of marketing to let them know that service is available to them at the higher speeds.
All right, but you said where you put it now is largely dictated by the grant itself. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And the ones that you're investing in through your own funds, what is the criteria for serving those customers?
It does tend to be the more densely populated areas.
Okay.
Certainly.
So rural customers basically are the last to be served.
Yep. So, well, one thing I will, let you know that is, you can see that, in this map here, the fortunate thing is, in order to be able to reach the more rural areas, we have to start, have to create something, it's almost akin to a spider's web or a very elaborate highway system, where you've got to serve this area to get to the next area to get to the next area. And the great thing about what we find here in Johnston County is we've already commenced the construction process within the more densely populated areas. Many of those locations are already open for sale. So that will enable us to move to the more rural areas much, much quicker.
Okay.
Do you have like a timeline? Sorry. Do you have like a timeline? I know you said the future, so like all the yellow dots. Did you have like a timeline of when those would be available?
Typically, what happens, and this is fairly standard across the nation, as a grant is awarded, it comes with a requirement or a timeline
completion.
to build out. And typically, those are 2-year contracts. Okay. So the service has to be built out, open for sale within 2 years from the date of signature on the contract. That is fairly standard across not just the state of North Carolina's grant programs, but across the nation.
I have one more question. Are there any grant requirements that toward customer service and servicing those customers that once they are up and running on fiber, if there is an outage, what is Brightspeed's commitment to customer service to get businesses back up and running and not be down for multiple days?
So typically, when there's a transition over to fiber, a lot of times we can detect issues before a customer even knows they have an issue. And to be honest with you, once we get customers on fiber, unless that fiber is cut, we very seldom hear from them. And I say that in a very positive way because the network is so reliable. Certainly during the recent Hurricane Helene, we don't have a lot of services in the western part of the state, but we do have some. And we had instances where we had a few thousand customers impacted that were on the copper network. And we had, it was less than a dozen that were impacted on the fiber network because fiber is just far more resilient than the old copper network. And the great thing about fiber is it is, particularly the technology that we're using to deploy, it's somewhat of a plug-and-play technology that Corning has come up with. And quite honestly, and I'm talking about the individual strands here, I'm not talking about the transport fiber. Transport fiber gets cut, it is meticulous to repair that. But it's really just a plug-and-play, meaning we can, if a fiber is damaged, you can unplug it at one end and plug it back in and then plug it back in at the other end. Quite honestly, it's so simple. I've done it in a classroom type of environment myself. So the fiber network itself, for one, it's far more resilient. Two, it's oftentimes we can detect a problem before a consumer or a business knows they have a problem and take care of it because of the technology associated with monitoring it. And then finally, if there is a damage to it, it's typically much easier to repair.
So, Mr. Brewer, I had a couple of things. So, the Greater Grant, the CAB grants, and the BEAD are all designed for unserved and underserved areas, correct?
Yes, sir.
And so, the situation that Commissioner Stovall, described, is that an underserved area, or is that
Well,
based on
the
criteria?
definitions have shifted somewhat over the past few years, particularly as the need for speed has increased. But quite frankly, both of those both of the grant programs are really all three: CAB, GRATE, BEAD. The locations, be they unserved or underserved, or that either notation makes them eligible.
Okay, and so this may, Rick, this may be involve you here. So, right now, out of the four you described, the greater, the CAB 2.0, and the BEAD, we are still sitting in the greater grant. We have not ventured into the CAB. I know, and which is my frustration is there are plenty of counties that have got the greater done, some that have got the CAB done, and maybe even on the CAB 0.2 sounds like it's still coming. But we're still sitting in phase one, and we've got other areas to address. And I know this is not for you, but somehow we as a county have to get moving on this, because it has been very frustrating sitting up here for
There's a big yellow dot right on my house.
3-4 years. Yeah, and so that's the other thing is what you showed. The blue dots are the ones you're providing right now.
That is the ones that we're
in the
building
program.
out. Yes, sir.
Yeah, build it. And so the yellow dots are to be coming in the future, but it does not include any of the other providers and what they're
That's true.
working
That's
on
true.
now. So there's other areas that are.
This is the status of Brightspeed's GRATE grant program. Certainly, there were some other providers that have won some locations, but still, the yellow dots there do consider that. So the yellow dots are what remains. Now, you may see that number, the 5,980, come down just slightly. Right now, we are in a process due to the CAB 2.0 just opening up last week. We're in a process where the state has published a map that indicates we think all of these are unserved. We think all of these locations across the state are unserved. Providers have a couple of weeks to go in and say, no, I've actually served this location, that location. So typically you will see the location or the eligible locations tick down just a little bit. It will not be significant. And what that means is, as a provider has built out in a given area, perhaps they get close enough to a location that would have otherwise be deemed eligible, and they choose to go ahead and serve it. We do that all the time. If we get close enough to a location, be it eligible or not eligible for the grant, we'll go ahead and serve it.
Okay.
So you may see that number come down just a bit.
And so for me, as I've sat here this morning, we've listened to Johnston County first for our emergency services, for our parks, greenways and space. Who else is it? And we're using ARPA money. And and the county employees pursuing all those, and I'm looking more this way now, is it's very frustrating for me to sit up here and see there's one we haven't even moved on yet, and one more that's opened up that I haven't heard anything on. So somehow we have to get moving on these and make sure, because the funds are limited, that they have them reserved for counties, or is there a possibility we could miss out if we?
So no, I mean, there should be no reason for you to miss out. There were some significant tweaks to the CAB 2.0 program. I shouldn't even call them tweaks, significant changes to the CAB 2.0 program. The CAB program required a significant county match, really like 30% of the overall project fund. So for every $1 million, you were tasked with committing, you as a county would have been tasked with committing $300,000 to the grant program. That has since been modified, and the state has also made available to counties as their match requirement, if you will, funding available, so that essentially counties may not have to come out of pocket at all. Now, the BEAD program, which again, that comes on the heels of CAB 2.0, which I expect to be around the end of the first quarter, that does not have a county match requirement. That will all be, the county will be very involved in the process of awarding grants, but it does not require an investment by the county.
Okay. I'll go back to the Johnston County first. We're not first, but I'd like to be catching up and making sure we get our stuff in it. And Commissioner Stovall, again, you got folks out there who are already waiting and potentially could see upgrades that we need to make sure we move this along.
The great news, again, about the state's participation in the BEAD program requires that we get everyone to at least 100 by 20 as part of our participation. If we go to the federal government and say, yes, we want the $1.5 billion that you've awarded, as a condition of that, though, we have to get everyone universal coverage to we have to get everyone universal coverage of speeds of at least 100 by 20. There inevitably will be some locations within this state, typically because of the geography, that you're not going to deliver that service via fiber. However, that should not be the case in this county. Some of the more mountainous regions, you get up around the lakes with the various little peninsulas, taking fiber to those locations gets extraordinarily expensive. But you just don't have that situation in this county that should cause the vast majority, if not all, should be served by fiber in this county.
All right. I know we've talked. Thank you for taking all the questions. But
Happy
any other final questions? And then with the staff, like I said, and you've heard this from me 100 times, we need to do something to making sure we're moving on this as fast as we can.
If you do come up with individual questions, Mr. Hester and I, we correspond frequently. He knows how to get hold of me.
We'll find you.
Absolutely. Happy to help.
Whether it's on copper line or fiber optic, we'll find you.
We're happy to help. Thank you for your time today, and look forward to participating in a big way moving forward with the additional locations.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brewer.
Thank you, Mr. Brewer.
All right, the next item is appointments, and we've made some on the consent agenda where we had, at a minimum, the number of applicants equaled the positions available. We had some that we still have more available to be filled, but we do have one for the Library Board of Trustees where we have 2 positions and we have 5 applicants, and so has become the custom for us. We have ballots at each one of the commissioners' seats. So if you would complete those and sign them, and we'll pass them around to the deputy clerk, and she will tally those, and we will make that announcement at the beginning of the 6 o'clock meeting. And finally, let's see, not finally, but the last one other than us and Rick, we have our delinquent tax collection report, and Jocelyn Andrews, our tax administrator,
She said a lot.
Yes, she has.
Good morning,
We'll see if
Commissioners.
maybe next time it's long, we'll move you closer to the front. How about that?
I'm good either way, whatever you need me to do. Good morning, and welcome, Commissioner Davis and Commissioner Rose.
Thank you.
Look forward to working with you in the future, and if our office can ever do anything, do not hesitate to reach out to us, okay? Each month, you will see this collection report, and it is for the month, not the month prior, but the month prior to that. So this is the October collection report. It shows you what the levy is, what my office is responsible and charged for collecting for the entire county. So this is just the county portion of it. And as you can see, we're rolling on that number, but we are getting into the very busy time of the year. As of the next morning session that you have, that will be the last day to timely pay your taxes for 2024 tax year. So just a reminder to the citizens out there, this number that you're seeing in front of you, the majority of that does not, or the mortgage companies have not submitted their numbers as of the date of these numbers, so that number has changed significantly over the last 30 years. Moving on to another thing that is a little bit of a hot topic in our office is January 1st, 2025 is the date of revaluation. It has not happened in this county in 6 years, but it is that time. We are not 100% done, but we are very close. And so I just kind of want to give you a very high-level overview of what to expect over the next few days or the few weeks. Our goal is to mail notices to all property owners by the end of the year or around the first year. That date is still subject to change at this point. I would remind everybody that the last reval, like I said a minute ago, was 2019, and Johnston County has changed significantly since that time, 6 years. So what that means is expect an increase. At the 2019 revaluation, the county increase was a little over 24%. That was the average. There were certain parts of the county that were significantly higher than that and others that were less than that. You will see much larger increase than that for this next reval. Just to give you an idea, I don't have the number. Just let's be clear. I don't have the number yet. But just to remind everybody of our surrounding counties, for those that went through a 24 reval, so in other words, a year ago right now, Wake County, and they were on a 4-year cycle, had a 52% increase in value. Wilson County, theirs was a larger, I think theirs was 8 years, it was 56%, and then Franklin County was over 76%. So that just shows you of the changes in this area of the state, and we know that Johnston County, you talk about first, Johnston County being first, our growth has been substantial, and we will see that in the next numbers. So I would just suggest that over the next few weeks, as people are looking at the county website and looking at social media and things of that sort, you will begin to see a series of 3 videos that have been prepared by our Public Information Office that will help explain a little bit about reval, what it is, how we got the numbers, and then what's next. So I would, encourage everybody to look at those when they start coming out. And needless to say, once they come, the instructions will be on the form about how to reach out to our office should you have any questions, and we will be more than happy to sit down and discuss with property owners that might have any questions. I'll be happy to take any questions from this board.
All right, any questions?
People tend to see that increase in their valuation as a negative thing, but that means their net worth has gone up considerably.
And I think one thing to point out, just to kind of put things in perspective, is, the value that you're paying your taxes on in the next 30 days is what we valued it at based on 2019 values. So that hasn't changed. Unless you've changed your property, we haven't changed anything, and that's still that value. And so, quite frankly, after this, we go to a 4-year if this board doesn't decide to do otherwise. The last decision that was made is that we would be on a 4-year reval afterward, and quite frankly, that's the best thing. The sooner you can do it, and quicker, then the numbers are not, there's not a sticker shock to the citizens and the property owners, and it also makes it makes it a little more fair for everybody, because everybody's being taxed on what the market is, and that's what we're trying to get to, is what is your property actually worth as of January 1st.
All right, and I would just comment too, there's 2 pieces of that. One is the value, the other, as one of our former commissioners say, with the millage rate, the tax rate that this board sets, so they work in tandem, that you have the value and then you have the actual tax rate, which determines. And I hear your net worth goes up, but people are still stroking a check and paying the bottom line, and that's what's important to
and to
the
clarify
taxpayers.
that point, if I could, that is something that everybody needs to remember, is we set, as it goes, it's kind of a calendar year thing. So on January 1st, that's when we set values. Then this board will set the tax rate, and the towns will set their tax rates in June. And then we send out the tax bills around the 1st of August. So, the current tax rate will be set then. It's not been set yet. So, we'll see where we go next year.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, next up, manager reports and comments. All right, that brings us to board reports and comments, and Commissioner Godwin, I'm going to start with you, and I'm going to go around this way.
You don't give me time to collect my thoughts, do you?
You always come back. If you catch them by the way, you always have time to get back in there, so.
I would just say we're starting I feel like we're starting a new year. We are starting a new board here. And I would remind our new members and our old members that every dollar we spend belongs to the taxpayer, except the extent to you pay your own taxes. We're spending other people's money. And we need to always keep that in mind. Obviously, we need to bring the services that the citizens demand and desire and expect. But we also need to keep in mind it's their money we're spending and do it frugally and smartly. Sometimes I have been accused of lacking vision, and that it takes that as well. Scared money never made anything. But with the group we have here, I think we can always come to a consensus and do the right thing, especially with guidance from the staff. We have a great staff. So I look forward to it.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Stovall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to follow up on what Mr. Godwin said, I want to add in there transparency. I think that's the most important thing that we can have in government is transparency. And with transparency, your citizens have a better understanding of the decisions and why they're made. And they're much more accepting when they see that. They may not agree with it, but they're accepting as to why those decisions are made. I also want to welcome our newest commissioners, Commissioners Shell Pace Davis and Commissioner Mike Rose. It's good to have y'all on the board. Look forward to working with you the next 4 years. Look forward to it.
Welcome, everybody. I'm excited to be a part of this group, and I think we've got a great team here, and I look forward to being part of a team.
Thank you.
Good morning. Welcome to the new commissioners as well. And I was a little short for words this morning for the speeches when we, 4 of us anyway, got.
So you're going to make up for that now?
No,
Is that what you're saying?
probably not completely. But as we signed into our office again for another 4 years, I'm just really excited about the path we're on and the things that we plan to accomplish, not just in the next 4 years, but hopefully, for generations after this board. And then also just wanted to recognize that the town of Benson did appoint Max Rayner as the new mayor pro tem right now in the wake of Mayor Medlin's passing. So we know we're in good hands with him. He's no stranger to the town of Benson. So just looking forward to another year.
Thank you.
All right, and I do look forward to serving with this board. One of the things that are our priorities are financial stewardship, and to build on what Commissioner Godwin said, as a town commissioner, it was always evident that the needs and wants were unlimited, but the funds were very limited. They were very finite, and so I think this board has had a history of being very good financial stewards with the taxpayer monies, and I look forward to being a part of those decisions in the future.
Vice Chairman Harris.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I first want to welcome the new board members and returning board members, and also appreciate your vote of confidence as continue as vice chair. I appreciate the opportunity to serve in that capacity. Johnston County is just such a wonderful place. I think everybody up here and everybody in the audience and everyone listening would agree that it's just the greatest place in the world to live and raise a family. And so we're so blessed to be in a wonderful place. And I'm proud of this board. I'm proud of the accomplishments that have been made. And I know that there will be great accomplishments in the future. I look forward to working with each one of you. And Mr. Godwin makes a good point that the government has nothing to give without first taking it from someone else. But I believe that this board has done a good job in trying to provide the level of service that the people want and balance that with being good stewards of the taxpayers' money. And, investing where the future is important, in our public safety, in our education, all the different things, the infrastructure improvements that are being made. Those are all important. Sometimes we plant trees that we'll never sit under the shade of, but it's important to plant it today. And so I think that's a philosophy going forward. So I just look forward to the future and appreciate everybody being here and look forward to working with you.
All right. Thank you. And I've had a couple of things as well. One is thank you to the board for the confidence to have me continue on as chairman. I look forward to that. It's a great board to work with. We do have a lot of things on our plate in front of us and some things to finish up. And I know that with the addition of new commissioners, there's going to be things that they bring to the table we haven't had before, talents and skills, and also different folks that they know and interact with that'll bring a lot to the table. I thank you for that. And one thing that when we started off today, we were talking about Johnston County leading the way. And I think we had 4 words, again, to go back to, I'm going to draw on these a lot from our branding, and the empowering, visionary, responsive, and compassionate. And I think of the visionary piece and the empowering piece, that we set the policies up here, it goes on to staff, and we empower them to make those decisions, and they pass it on down to other staff members. But when I looked at the public safety, and again, we go back to the policies, I'm going to use a little leeway here in the educational funding. I mean, we talked about Johnston County grows ag in our school system. Infrastructure, had plenty on infrastructure today. The financial stewardship, again, can't say enough about what our team, the finance team, and all the other departments do in looking after the taxpayers' dollars. Land use, we talked about that, and with Chandra and with the infrastructure. Public safety, we touched on that. And I'll just go back to our county employees. I mean, we've got, when you think of empowering, visionary, responsive, and compassionate, I mean, you live it every day and represent the county well in all the interactions with the public that you have. So I thank the county employees for all that they do for not just this board, but for everybody in the county. And the final thing is that we have, again, along the responsive and compassionate, when Helene hit our neighbors to the west, we sent 16 trailer loads of supplies out there. We raised $50,000 to send out there, and the 12th of this month, there will be a contingent of us going out there. The sheriff, I'm sure the deputy sheriff will go, Rick, and I'm planning on going out there to deliver that $50,000 to Samaritan's Purse. It's the group that we have decided to send that money to. So again, Johnston County and the people of Johnston County are very responsive and compassionate to the needs of others. So that is all I have for today. I think we do have a need for a closed session.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board go into a closed session for the purposes of consulting with an attorney employed by the board in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318-11A3.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. I will add that I do not anticipate there will be any action after that closed session. For those in the press who are wondering if there will be any action, yes, I was looking at you, Wingate. And so with that, all in favor of going into closed session, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nay? All right, we'll be in closed session after a few minutes to clear.